Hello guys, welcome to lesson number 55 in our series Drawing Techniques for Beginners. Towards the end of the last lesson we started to add our background, so what I've done is I've continued using some of my softer pencils. I actually started using a little bit of the 4 and the 6B in there, just very lightly, using my brush and the tissue paper, and then just really taking out this lighter area in the centre there, which I now feel has given us a really nice background and a really nice contrast, so that we can start to then bring out the highlights. So what we're going to do today in today's lesson, we're going to be finishing this off today. I'm going to be using my Faber-Castell Polychromos Black Schwartz colour pencil, and we're just going to really start to bring out the contrast in some of these darkest areas. So let's start off by having a go in some of these portholes that are around the top, and I'm using a very similar technique to what we've been using with the graphite pencils, which is this sort of pulling action towards me, this kind of tapered stroke. Now, when you are using coloured pencils, these sort of waxy pencils, to get a real vibrant sort of saturation of colour, you do have to press quite hard, much harder than you would do with the graphite pencils. Now, this is why we definitely leave this to the end, because if I need to make any adjustments, it's almost impossible now, because I am pressing on a little bit harder with this pencil crayon, and also because we are so layered now with the graphite underneath that it would be very, very difficult, probably impossible to take this back to just the white paper. So this is why we leave this stage to the end, and it's actually one of my favourite phases anyway, or favourite stages anyway. It's the stage where things do really start to come to life. So I'm just applying a light layer of this black pencil crayon, just using the tapered stroke, but just applying a little bit more pressure. And what this is going to now start doing is it's just going to really bring the contrast out. It's going to allow us to really see those highlighted areas, and it's just going to finish the drawing off nicely. If this is the first time you visited the channel, I really would recommend going and having a look at the first 6 lessons. They're called Essential Pencil Skills. And then work your way through the projects. You know, we're on lesson 55 now, which I never dreamt in a million years that we'd be up to. I didn't really, you know, I had no idea how far we were going to go with this. But along with the group, the Facebook group, and creating, you know, some wonderful pieces, and seeing some of you creating wonderful pieces, we're just kind of ploughing on with this. But if you've not joined us yet, come and find us over on the Facebook group. It's called Tutorial Tuesdays Beginners to Pro. I'm going to just add a little bit of the darkness now into the eyes here, particularly around that lower area of the eye, just to bring out a little bit of definition. And just fading that out, so we have got a gradation of value rather than just a very thick black area with a line which finishes it off. So I'm just paying attention now. I'm just looking at all of these very dark areas in our drawing, into the creases and the wrinkles. And I'm just applying some of this black pencil crayon. A little bit in the lips. So I'm really excited about our next project. So we're going to be doing the dog portrait. So you can get the reference image over on the Facebook group now. If you go to the top of the group and have a look at the section, it says albums, and then if you click into that it says reference images. You'll be able to find that, but I will be posting the image again up on there. So that's a lovely picture of my brother's Weimar armour. She's just over 1 year old now, and I thought it'd be a nice project because it's actually drawing quite short hair on a dog. We did our project, which was aptly named Shadow, which was of the Siberian Husky, a little while ago now. And that was a challenge in itself, drawing the long hair, but also there's quite a lot of white hair on that. So I think with this next dog portrait, we're going to be looking at some different challenges. There's a lot of expression in the eyes. The photo's very, very high resolution. So we're going to be able to get a lot of detail out of that. And it's something that, I do say to people that you can't draw what isn't there. So if somebody's asking you to do a commission, or you're looking to draw something and you're pulling images off of the internet, if you want to make the best job, you must have an image that has a lot of detail in there. So the higher the resolution, the better the quality, the better your drawing is going to turn out. And I've had a few people in the past that have asked me to do a commission for them, and the reference image that they've sent me is of such low quality that I've actually had to decline their offer, because I don't want to put my name to a piece that is going to be substandard because the quality of their image isn't quite right. And inevitably what they end up doing is they end up finding something that's of a better quality. And it's like I say to people that they ask me to draw something for them, and they've got a very low resolution image from their mobile phone, let's say. And I say to them, would you put that up on your wall in a frame? If you were to just print that mobile phone image out and stick it on a frame, would you have that on the wall? Is that a good enough photograph for you? And inevitably, they often say no. So my next question is, why would you ask me to draw that for you? I can do a lot of things with a pencil, but I can't turn a poor image into a good image. I don't want to be making things up. And if I'm having to guess whether the blemish on the side of the face is due to a poor image, or it's actually there, it's a mole or some characteristic that the person is actually displaying, it means that quite often I'm going to get it wrong, and I'm going to leave something out that they potentially wanted in there, or I'm going to add something that isn't really there. I love adding this black pencil crayon. It's or coloured pencil. It really does just start to add those final details and that contrast. There would be a couple of the people that I learnt from in the early days, they would be turning in their grave if they saw me doing this now. I learnt from some very traditional artists that didn't believe in going to black. But like I say, what I'm trying to teach you is, for me, a combination of the best practices and the things that have worked for me. And I don't mind drawing completely in pencil, but I just think that adding this last layer just in some specific areas really does give you another dimension. So we have quite a lot of these very dark black shadows in specific areas, particularly under this handle of the torch. So we're going to be quite sparing with it. We're not going to cover huge areas in flat tones, but we do want to add some of that contrast with these very dark areas. But this project's actually taken a lot longer than I thought it would do. On my initial assessment of the drawing, or the reference image, I thought this was going to be a sort of a 5 or 6 sitting project, but it's actually gone on a little bit longer than I assumed it would do. But that's okay. I mean, I think if you've learned anything from me over the last few months, it's patience is one of the most important lessons that you can learn. So if this is going to take us 8 sittings, then so be it. If it's going to take us 10, that's fine. We're not doing a commission. We're not having to get it done by a certain time. So we just do it to the best of our ability. So I'm just looking for these areas that are furthest away from the light. Where does one part of the hand cross over and meet a part of the torch. I'm going to try and just accentuate that by adding darker value with this. So we've got some very dark values underneath this torch, and I know it's going to be darkest towards the rim because the light is going to struggle to get under there. So I'm going to always start my pencil strokes up in that area, and I'm just going to try and fade it out slightly. Make sure you keep turning your pencil. The same thing applies with the coloured pencils as it does with your graphite. If you keep turning it every now and then, it self-sharpens. And we don't have to keep sharpening this, which ultimately saves you money, because the more you sharpen something, the more you use the pencil up, and therefore having to buy them more often. I get these from, I think the last time I bought these was from Amazon. The polychromos, I think, they're better for fine details. So if you're drawing hairs or very, very small details, I do think that the polychromos do hold their tip a bit better. Perhaps the best that I've used the Prismacolors as well. There's another brand of coloured pencil that I use as well. The name evades me for now, which are quite expensive actually, and they're beautiful for skin tones and things like that, and they blend very well together. But for me, these polychromos are very useful at these fine details. So what I do tend to do is I keep in stock in my house a few of the blacks and a few of the whites in the polychromos, because again, the whites are very important when I'm doing any coloured marker work and things like that, just for adding some highlights and blending certain areas. So I do try and keep those two. I've got always 3 or 4 of those in. They're possibly costing me around about £2.50 a pencil, £2 possibly. So yes, they're not the cheapest of pencil crayons and coloured pencils, but for what I'm using them for, where I'm not doing an awful lot with them, they're fine. So again, that edge closest to the rim is where I'm going to keep adding and layering, just to show that that's the darkest point. So we definitely need a little bit of this coloured pencil in these shapes around the edge of the torch here. There's some nice contrast in there. Not getting bogged down too much in the details, they don't have to be completely accurate and too pedantic and worrying too much about them. We're just giving the general idea and feel, and we're going to let the brain make up the rest of it, really. I was listening to something the other day which was talking about how when the human brain sees something, it's only 50% of our visual cortex that is actually activated. So what they're suggesting now is that a lot of what we see, 50% of what we're looking at, is being pulled from memories. And that rings true for when we're drawing. The best drawings, looking from a distance, we look at them and we have a suggestion that something's there, a cloud or this flame, or that's a nose and that's a shadow. And then as we get closer to it and we look at it, it starts to lose its magic. And that was always something that I used to do. I used to look at these fantastic drawings that people had done in my early days of art, and I'd blow the pictures up, so I'd zoom into them on my mobile phone or make them larger and print them out, and as you get closer to them and you can see the pencil strokes and the individual details, it almost lost some of its magic. But as you step away from it again and you see the whole picture, as your brain then starts to fill in the blanks and it allows itself to almost daydream and just perceive things that are maybe not there but are just hinted at being there, you have this wonderful picture. So I think that the what I'm trying to get across there is don't be too bogged down with the details sometimes. If you can push the viewer into a certain way of perceiving things, then we get a much better result. Just where these fingers are just meeting the actual handle of this torch itself, we're just going to have a slightly darker area, and the top of this, again, where the light is struggling to get to or is having a harder time getting to. We possibly need a little bit just under here, just to show curvature. And it's at this stage where there has to become a time when we say, I'm now happy with it. You know, I could probably spend a couple of hours on this stage really just fine-tuning and bringing out certain areas. But we get to a point where we go, do you know what? I'm happy with this now. And it's something that I've said an awful lot in the videos and over in the group, that when I first started out, I met a lot of lovely artists, and one of them said to me that there's a famous saying that art is never finished, it's just abandoned. And I didn't really understand it at the time, but I absolutely understand it now, that I'm going to get to a stage with this, which is going to be in the next couple of minutes, I would say, where I'm happy enough with it. I could probably spend more time doing it and fine-tuning it, but we end up abandoning it and saying, I'm happy with this, how it is. And it's amazing that you get to that stage and then you look back at it in a few months when your skill level's improved and you've learnt how to bring the contrast out or add a few details here and there. And you look at your old drawings and you think, actually, I would like to get that out of its picture frame and have another go. Or at least fine-tune a little bit. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to take my kneaded eraser and I'm just going to add some of those final highlights and give it a final brush, and then I think we're going to get this signed. So I definitely want this side of the arm to be in bold reflection or in bold sunlight. This entire left hand side, this is what's going to create the contrast. A little bit on this part of her crown. Just tap a little bit of this value back on the bridge of the nose, just to give us a little bit of definition. But again, like I was saying a couple of minutes ago, I don't need to get bogged down with the details. I'm just going to gently push the viewer in the direction that I want them to go, to perceive things how I want them to. We have this sort of almost a vein. And just the edges of these ears just got a slight highlight in there because they're rounded. They come up and over. Each part of this ear has its own peak to it and its own recess. And like I've been saying in all of the videos, the more of these opportunities that you can find within your drawing to bring out a slight curve, the better the overall picture is going to look. So looking for these subtle changes in value, like around this lip here. We've just got some mottled type of textures on the rim of this torch. It's not all a flat value. Okay, so I'm going to take my 2B pencil now, and we're going to look for a place that is going to be suitable to sign this. I think I'm going to come into possibly this area at the bottom here. Taken the 2B pencil because it's quite a dark pencil, but I'll probably play around with that a little bit more. But I've been really pleased with the outcome of this. I'm quite happy with how she's turned out. I've seen some of your versions of them over on the Facebook group, which are looking fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me in this project. Don't forget, we're going to move on to our dog portrait, so have a look for the reference image over on the Facebook group. If you haven't subscribed to the channel so far, do that. Hit the notifications icon. That means that you're going to be notified when I release a new video. And just giving this a final brush. And by all means, play around with it for another hour, bring out some of those darker values. But I think I'm happy enough leaving you with that. I think you can see where we've gone with that. Have fun with it, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, smack the notifications button, follow me on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter.